Claire. Ladies and gents, distinguished guests and fellow scholars, I stand before you as a reflection only of the support that I've been given and the inspiration that I've gained throughout my journey. And so with the brief time that I have, I say thank you to all those who have been involved. Thank you to Nuffield Australia and the NT committees for the opportunity to be here, and of course a big thank you to my sponsors, Elders, Consolidated Pastoral Company, Sid Kidman & Co and the Australian Agricultural Company. What a journey it has been. Today I'll be talking briefly about my studies, looking at opportunities for the North, and more specifically technology integration in the Northern Pastoral region, and how I came to realise that the future of sustainable agriculture lies at the intersection of tradition and technology. Originally from the West Wimmera in Victoria, I've now spent nearly 2 decades up in the Territory, and my journey's seen me working right throughout the beef supply chain up there, working on the ground, running stock camps, working on the seas with international live export voyages, and working in the sky, mustering as a chopper pilot. It's been a journey where I've been very privileged to gain a deep understanding of the economic, the cultural and the political fabric of the Territory cattle and farming industries. I've seen some big challenges firsthand, as well as day-to-day issues faced by producers. I've also seen some great successes from industry leaders creating change through innovation, and it's given me insights into the challenges and pitfalls within the industry and where change should occur. A few years ago, that experience led me to taking a position with AgriWeb, an agtech company, which thanks to COVID saw me locked up in Sydney for over 2 years. And that's me in the middle there standing out like a sore thumb on one of the beaches post-lockdown. But that turned out to be some of the most valuable experience that I've ever had, learning about all sorts of different technologies and how they can be applied to our production systems in the North. And I was hungry to learn more, to give back to my industry that's given me so much, and ultimately that's what led me to apply for a Nuffield scholarship, which came at a very turbulent time in my life. Not long after beginning the journey, I founded a new company as an asset manager to streamline operations and develop a diversified portfolio for a feed company. I was ambitious and it was a very exciting time. I was full of passion and full of enthusiasm. But before we even began, in July 2022, literally the day before we would take on the property, we had a serious accident on that property, a fatality, and it changed everything. For the people and the families involved, it changed things forever, and for us as a management company, well, our plans went out the window. So we started from scratch. And then I stepped in to take over the management of this very heavy weed burden on a property that had been neglected for some time. We were focused on creating a circular system, grazing and breeding our own cattle, growing our own hay to be fed out in our own feedlot, with pellets produced in our own pellet mill. And with the help from learnings taken from around the world with my Nuffield scholarship, within 18 months we were able to develop over 1,000 hectares of this into this. But as I mentioned, it was a very turbulent time. It was a period where Grace and I had only just met and started our relationship, and she had eventually come to work with me on the station, where not long after that I'd take off on my travels around the world with Nuffield, which often looked like this. Leaving her to manage the day-to-day operations and the staff, which sometimes looked like this. No, I'm just kidding. This is before she met me, of course. I actually stole this from Grace's Instagram. Sorry, Grace. But I just wanted to illustrate, as most scholars and probably their families would agree, that it's not easy to do a Nuffield scholarship. To walk away from your life for weeks and sometimes months on end, your loved ones and your business. And so I owe a huge debt of gratitude to Grace to allow me to step away and travel freely, knowing that the operation was in the most competent of hands. So thank you, Grace. And so for my scholarship, I decided to focus on the challenges that I've observed throughout the industry. Producers face a lot of challenges in the North, but one of the common ones I found was data management. Plenty of producers are collecting it, but with such a transient workforce, often the important data was overlooked and sometimes lost altogether. It'd end up in a notebook or a black box, either get lost or sometimes people just wouldn't know what to do with that data, so the value wasn't extracted entirely in a lot of cases, I thought. Another very obvious challenge that had grown insidiously over the years, there we go, sorry, was the diminishing social licence for producers involved in live export, that dirty word. After the ban in 2011, there was so much pressure on the industry, but when the trade recommenced, that pressure was then diverted to the banks as probably the most effective way to put pressures on producers and live export. Anyone involved in the trade in the north saw a huge loss of support from financial institutions and investors, and to me, this was based on baseless facts and rhetoric. But as an industry, we struggled to stand up to it. We didn't have the data throughout our supply chain to back up our claims of being sustainable and responsible producers who put animal welfare at the forefront of what we do. So I went out in search of technologies that could be deployed in our production systems in the north and give us the data that we needed to implement the changes that would have positive effects. The learnings I gained through my scholarship solidified my belief that innovation is key to tackling the challenges that we face, whether it's proving our claims around animal welfare, reducing our carbon footprint, or unlocking the genetic potential of our herds. The answers lie in our willingness to embrace new ideas and technologies. And the role that I'd taken on at Carbine Park was the perfect testing ground for a lot of the things that I was learning. I was bringing home a lot of things from my travels with Nuffield around the world. I learned about super advanced technologies, like these very sophisticated sensory systems in greenhouses in Israel, to United Operations Centres like this one at Aviva in the UK. Also traffic management systems for entire cities, all sorts of wonderful, complex things. But honestly, some of the most valuable and impactful technologies that I discovered simply came from chatting with someone sitting next to me on a bus on a post-conference industry tour, sorry. So thanks to Swifty for this one at last year's conference. I've just used these two examples. They're very, very simple to use, easy to access and free. And these two tools alone can help us quickly confirm, visually just by looking at them, that we are making improvements and we're on the right track. In 2 seasons at Carbine, we more than doubled the yield in the paddocks here on the screen, with actually a poorer wet season. And we give credit to increasing ground cover, less tillage, seed coating, and targeted fertiliser applications. And with simple imagery like this, it's so simple to illustrate the positive results that we were having. And with a little bit more data to complement this imagery, we can readily certify then our claims to those who we might need to, like financial partners or investors, potential investors down the track, by detailing the specific methods we used to achieve such positive results. And so now with data collected from technologies like these, along with a few others, this property now has a solid benchmark to work from. In future years, they can compare key metrics around soil health and nutrition, yield, rainfall, and then moving into things like biodiversity and soil carbon, emissions and so on, and then keep making improvements in their system from there. And while that's all valuable from a production perspective, this data can further be leveraged then by producers to illustrate responsible land management and diligent financial management, which ultimately helps improve social licence and access to capital. And we can use a whole range of technological applications in our production systems, but the key that I've found is to identify exactly what it is we want to monitor and for what outcome. And from there, we deploy the right technologies, set benchmarks, and begin to make quantifiable improvements. And then we can engage and share our story through that data with the community and stakeholders up and down the supply chain. We need to look outwards from the farm gate with our data, of course, not to give away our trade secrets, but to share outcomes transparently with an ever more connected world. Conversations I've had with stakeholders around the world confirm that there is value in data, particularly when it demonstrates responsible environmental stewardship. From some of the biggest investment companies in the world to executives of the leading banks in Singapore, they all agreed that transparency and traceability is worth rewarding. So I've learned that we can leverage data to improve social licence and access to capital. And in different sectors, we can certainly leverage it to access markets and drive premium prices, but it's a slightly different case for the Northern Territory involved in the live export trade. So my question now is, are stakeholders willing to share basic data to connect our supply chain end-to-end and share insights into performance metrics and reward producers who put effort into making improvements in their herd and their sustainability outcomes? I think to get there, we need a collaborative approach and to develop new and existing systems. We need a system that rewards each stakeholder along the supply chain to leverage and share that data. We need to ride on the back of technology while remaining connected to our traditional and relationships-based roots. And that's why I believe that the future of sustainable ag lies at the intersection of tradition and technology. So again, I'd like to say thank you to my sponsors for the wonderful experience over the past couple of years, but also for the belonging that it'll give us for the rest of our lives. Thank you.